Here's a brief history, and I should tell you this provision, Section 1031, and its predecessors have been in the code almost 102 years now. Since 1921, there's been an iteration or version of 1031 that allows for the tax-deferred exchange of property. The rationale for giving you a pass on triggering the recognition of the gain, the rationale or thought process is you're not cashing out. If you're not cashing out and you're just continuing your investment into other like-kind property, the government says, you know what, we'll just give you a pass. They do that in part because they want to stimulate economic growth. They don't want you to be locked into your property. They want there to be volatility. They want there to be churning of real estate transactions. When real estate transactions are happening, bankers are making more loans, real estate agents are making more commissions, title companies are doing more closings, the local county assessor is out raising the taxes on everybody, right? So it all works very beautifully. In '79, a big critical event happened. This lumber baron, T.J. Starker, broke the mold on 1031 exchanges. Prior to Starker, these exchanges were thought to have a simultaneous modality where you would convey your relinquished property and immediately receive your replacement property. Starker said, I'm going to give up my lumber holdings in Oregon in exchange for some properties that will be determined later. Basically, he did the first legal, non-simultaneous exchange, and that blew the IRS's mind, and they litigated it all the way to the United States Supreme Court, where Starker won, more on a procedural argument than anything, but he won. And so he broke the floodgates open. And now, today, almost all exchanges are done non-simultaneously. You sell your relinquished property on one day, receive replacement property later. In the 80s and 90s, the IRS got Congress to authorize the Treasury to write their own regulations. So they're the agency that's in charge of administering this. They got the permission to write their own rules. So they enforce the rules that they wrote, and they're also given a certain amount of deference to interpret those rules because they have to administer it. That's sort of a Chevron kind of thing for the tax people or the lawyers in the room. What they basically did is they wrote rules that are not designed in your favor. These are designed to be guardrails to limit the number of people conducting exchanges and completing them. They required that this entire process, this non-simultaneous exchange, could not go on longer than 180 days. So the longest the exchange period can go is 180 days. But wait, there's a curveball. If you start your exchange late in the year, you will find that your exchange period actually ends not at the 180th day, but at the due date for the filing of your federal income tax return. So let's say you started your exchange on December 31st, and you're a partnership, you file on March 15th. You're not going to get the full breadth of your 180-day exchange period unless you file for an extension and push out your March 15th deadline. Same thing for people that file on April 15th as individual 1040s. You got the same problem. That is a big trap for the unwary. I tell real estate agents, particularly those that have been licensed as attorneys, I tell them, notify the other professionals that are in your client's sphere, including the accountant, and let them know what you're up to. As a courtesy, tell your client's accountant or tax preparer, we're in the midst of a 1031. You should be aware of that because you may have to file for an extension. Whatever you do, tax preparer, don't go and timely file that return on April 15th or March 15th without checking in with us, because we may need the full breadth of our 180-day exchange period. We may need you to file for an extension. In other words, the left hand and the right hand need to be working together. Your client's professional advisors all need to be circled around your client to help them navigate this process. So 45 days to identify, 180 days to close. These were imposed by the IRS. They are not designed with your success in mind. I get a lot of calls from people, and they're basically asking me, will you take an identification or a change of the identification after the 45th day? And while I love to wear orange, I'm not going to wear an orange jumpsuit for you or for anybody. So the answer is no, we're not going to do that. We're going to follow the rules. All right. Fast forward from the 80s and 90s into the 2000s. When the IRS came out with their initial regs for the forward exchanges in 91, they said, hold on a second, we'll get back to you on how to do reverse exchanges. It wasn't until the year 2000 when RevProc 2037 was issued on how to do safe harbor reverse exchanges. What is a reverse exchange? Typically that's where you acquire the replacement property first and then sell the relinquished property second. Well, let's just take a break. Why would you ever want to make your life more complicated, more difficult by buying first and then selling second? Why would you want to do that? Certainty. You want to have a sure thing, right? I was at Benihana, and the guy flipped a shrimp to the dude, and he caught it in his mouth. We're not going to do that today. But yeah, there's a lot of risk when you sell your relinquished property and then have only 45 days to identify in writing what you want to acquire and 180 days to close on it. You are basically running around like a chicken with your head cut off trying to figure out what to identify, unless you think ahead like a chess player. You may want to acquire the replacement property through a surrogate, your qualified intermediary, and have the intermediary hold that property for your benefit for up to 180 days under the reverse exchange safe harbor. What if you don't want to go through all that malarkey, having a straw man acquire the property, hold it for your benefit? Is there a more convenient way to achieve the same result? What if you simply went to the seller and said, seller, can I lock you up with a purchase agreement or an option agreement so I know I've got a sure thing to exchange into? That way I can sell my relinquished property after I know with confidence I've got you under lock and key. If I'm a young multifamily person scrambling to get up the rungs, are you going to throw me a lifeline and let me lock you up with a contract to buy your 60 unit? Probably. If I give you your price, you may give me your terms. So there are, particularly I find in the multifamily area, people that are willing to be patient and wait for you to dispose of your relinquished asset so that they can then sell their property to you. Sometimes we see a bunch of dominoes all ready to line up. We'll sell 1, 2, 3, 4, and they'll all go in a row because all of these exchanges are all contingent upon the first one going. So patient seller is another strategy. Instead of doing a reverse exchange, simply tie up the seller with a replacement property contract so you know you got a sure thing. You can start doing your due diligence. Get your phase 1, your phase 2, get your survey, whatever you need to do to inspect the goods. Make sure you're doing that early. Lock it up. So that's a pro tip. Thoughts or questions about straight exchanges, where we sell first and buy second, or the reverse, where we buy first, sell second? Questions about that? We'll have some more slides on that in a little bit with some more intense strategies. Finally, I just want to mention that 1031 has been in the sights of congressional legislators forever. Some people view it as a target, as a revenue raiser in order to increase taxation. If they eliminate 1031, they postulate that they will increase tax collections because 1031 won't be available any longer. However, the studies done by Ernst & Young and a couple of professors called Ling and Petrova actually counter that assumption. The lock-in effect of not being able to sell your property with tax deferral would result in people just not selling. For example, it's counterintuitive to think that a farmer that's had a farm in their family for 100 years, has super duper low basis, is going to sell that property and give away over a third of their hard-earned equity in taxes. They just won't sell. They will stay in it until they're dead and pass it on to the next generation, right? So that sale isn't going to happen, but for the fact that there's a 1031 provision to release the pressure and allow them to defer the gain and transition to something different. The other part of just sort of a legislative attacks are that there have been proposals in various political party platforms to eliminate 1031. There have been proposals in various political budgets to cap 1031. I want you to be aware that that's out there and that we as participants in the political process can bring pressure to bear on our legislators. I am often on Zoom calls with senators and Congress people, and I'm telling them 1031 is your friend. You see those construction cranes in your big cities? Those are there because 1031 is stimulating the economy and creating growth. That creates good quality union jobs. That creates new infrastructure in your city. 1031 is the tool that moves capital organically to the most advantageous place in your economy.